So it's March 29, and I just want to give a regular vlog and update on what's happening with me. If you've just found this channel, my name is Megan Mason. About 5 years ago, I discovered that my ex-husband had engaged in various serious acts of corruption. I knew things were weird before that in a divorce case, but it was 5 years ago that I discovered things were criminally bad, and I found a lot of evidence, and I tried to get help and raise awareness of my case, and I had a lot of support at that time. Not as much now, although I have different support from different people, but not back in Chicago, and I can't go back to Chicago. There are warrants, because even though I had volumes of evidence of corruption, the people in Chicago, people like the ACLU, people at my church who work in law, legal people in Chicago didn't do anything to help me. In the summer of 2021, it's not a good thing, but my younger son started complaining about his dad hitting him, and both of my boys then at that point had complained about their dad hitting them. I'd already reported abuse towards his disabled brother, and nobody had stopped it. And in family court, they don't help kids when their parents are abusive, not when their father is abusive and rich and has bribed people. And of course that sounds outlandish, but it happens, and it happened to me. But I was frustrated because I was screaming, trying to get a journalist to cover my story, trying to get people in my community to stand up for me as a civil rights victim. Because when people defraud you and pretend they're having hearings and act in ways to take your children away, that is a civil rights violation. I haven't seen my children in 4 years. So it's a civil rights violation if somebody commits fraud against you when you're a murderer, but it's in the court when judges and lawyers do that. But it's also a civil rights violation when you're not a murderer. The difference is, if you're a murderer, the ACLU will help you. But if you're an innocent mother, the ACLU will not even return your call, except to ask you for money. And then they will say that they defend the rights of all Americans. But I digress. So in the summer, I'm just introducing myself. I'm Megan Mason. You came onto my channel. It's already been 3 minutes. Another thing to know, I talk a lot, and so I'm going to try to monetize that. But yeah, I was frustrated because I was trying to report really obvious solicitation of bribery, fraud, people changed my address. And, you know, in 2020, Dorothy Brown, the clerk of the court, it was public knowledge that she was under FBI surveillance for 3 years. And one of the issues they were looking at was issues with the court's e-filing software. And then all of a sudden, I had 100 pages of evidence of people going into Dorothy Brown's software and changing my information. You can understand why I would have thought that the FBI would call me back. But when I made my reports, nobody got back to me in the summer of 2021. 6 tries. I tried to go to the office twice, but they were closed because of COVID. I couldn't go into the office. And so then I was really frustrated because both my children were complaining about being abused. So I knew one area of law better than others, and that's financial law. I knew that because I was a FINRA licensed stockbroker, and Morgan Stanley recruited me when I was 39 because I learned math rules very fast, and I knew about money laundering laws and tax evasion, and I knew my ex-husband was a financial criminal. I had disclosed that to Morgan Stanley starting when I first got licensed. I'm not a financial criminal. My ex-husband is. And I didn't get money out of that because he's a financial criminal. I tried to leave with $0 in the business. The court forced me to take $50,000, and they owed me more than that in wages he wouldn't let me have. So I didn't have any legal peril. And I knew the IRS would believe me because first my ex-husband had told me the first time I talked about calling the IRS, and I found out this isn't extortion when you're trying to get people to stop hurting you. My ex-husband used to love to take me to court to torture me, and I didn't have a car, and he was driving us to one of our son's medical appointments so he could later sue me for the cost of that medical appointment. True story. But while I was in the car, I said, Peter, if you take me to court on one of these fake charges again, I'm going to report you to the IRS. Peter's response wasn't, you won't call the IRS because I'm not guilty. Although before he had said that, when we were married, he was always like, there is no double taxation. If I pay taxes in Germany, I don't need to report it here, even though legally, of course you do. It was tax evasion, because obviously he wasn't reporting it in Germany either. Neither was his dad. That was the whole point. But when he said that, yeah, I wouldn't have had the father of my sons sent to prison. But when both my sons said that man was hitting them and said they never wanted to go back to his house, then I was more than happy to try to send him to prison and specifically get him deported, because you're supposed to get deported after one aggravated felony against the federal government, and he had committed more than 30, because they count like every FBAR violation. And I was right. Head counsel for Jeffries, where I worked at the time of my report, believed me, Michael Sharp. He said, oh yeah, they'll get him. And then the IRS wrote me back, Teresa Wigland, and she issued me 2 whistleblower numbers. That let me know I knew about Peter, because I knew about financial crimes, and I had the most on him. I had this much on him. But I only had like this much about the judges, and I'm not a criminal lawyer. I can just read the Federal Racketeering and Corrupt Influencers Act. So I got whistleblower numbers for that case too. So I knew I was right about the corruption. And I thought that was in January of 2022. I thought that I'd get my boys back. I thought that I would not lose everything, but I was wrong. Because a racketeering case takes a long time. And so people just stopped believing me. The only people who communicate with me about the case regularly are the U.S. Marshals that follow me everywhere. And if I talk about them, I get sent to an insane asylum. And if I've probably lost you at this point. So yeah, that was 9 minutes. That was my introduction. So that actually brings me to my other point. I do talk a lot, and I always have. And so I thought I don't seem to be able to get more succinct. But one of the things that's interesting about this moment is we are seeing a dawning of AI. And who knows if it's going to destroy us all. I think that's really still an open question. But one of the things that's very frustrating about my case is I've always known if just one of the 1,000 journalists I've reached out to, if they would just take the time to have an intern who went to law school and knows how to read court documents look through my case, they'd realize everything I say is true. And they'd probably discover some crimes I don't even know about. But nobody takes the time to do that. But at some point, someone can press a button and AI can go through everything and explain it in a way that people believe me. Maybe it's the messenger. I think it's a good time to start speaking into the ether, because I think some of the information will be picked up. So I've relaunched my Substack, and I'm going to be using it first as a wiki for case documents, but I'm also going back through my files and just noticing letters I've written. a letter I wrote to JB Pritzker in 2023, following up on an earlier letter, explaining everything that's going on and asking why he isn't stopping corruption in family court in Chicago, where judges literally have been publicly accused by lawyers of raping women who work there. JB Pritzker, who is asking people to nominate him to be our woke alternative for president because he's rich and independent. He can't even stop judges in Illinois from raping paralegals in the Circuit Court of Cook County, but he's going to keep standing up there? Okay. Keep trying. Just assume that I'm lying and assume I'm making it up. And then someday someone will turn on AI and will notice I'm telling the truth. And maybe it will still matter. Maybe there will still be people who think, you know what? I don't think a rich, abusive German man should be able to come to America, benefit from our system, cheat our tax laws, beat one of our women's children, and take the children away from her because he can pay a judge because he's rich and mean and evil. I don't think that's okay. I don't think that's why my grandfather won in Germany and my ex-husband's grandfathers lost in Germany. I do think that we should have courts where judges can't be bought so that they can take away children from a really good mom. I think there are a lot of people who think that. I think it's a reasonable thing to think. I don't mean to go on a rant, but I live in an absurd situation where every day I am living with this glaring injustice, and I talk to liberal people who can't see it, and they expect me to talk about their petty bullshit. Like I'm supposed to care about the stupidest, mildest aggressions against professional women in the workplace. I just don't. I do not care if somebody flirted with you on LinkedIn. I do not care. And what I've realized is so frustrating about people who say, oh, there's no such thing as relative suffering. Assault is assault. Those are people who've been in a situation where they've never had to rank order their own assaults. So for someone like me, just going through early childhood, the sexual assaults in early childhood makes it so that when I got drunk in college and had a regrettable sexual experience, I can tell you now that's not rape. And that upsets some people. But at this moment, when I'm literally experiencing a more profound civil rights violation than most people have experienced, it's very hard when I feel like people don't give you permission to acknowledge that some suffering is a little harder. So I haven't been able to have any contact with my children in 4 years. I can't have a driver's license or earn income without it being garnished because I'm the victim of judicial corruption. And every court I've gone to in Illinois to help has turned me away because it's better to protect the party system in Chicago than one basic bitch's civil rights. So I do think what's happening to me because of my testimony about corruption in Chicago, I do think that's worse just in Illinois because the ACLU covered it. The student in Palatine who had to use a different bathroom for a period, having to use a different bathroom for a while isn't as bad as having somebody take your children. Some people believe that sounds reactionary. I do not believe it. I think it's a sensible observation about the way people who purport to protect civil liberties are using the resources you give them. So why will the ACLU let somebody go into the Circuit Court of Cook County, change my mailing address, and do 1,000 other crimes against me as part of a conspiracy that's well documented to deprive me of my right to access family court? Why are they allowed to conspire on that? So much so that the U.S. Department of Justice has been watching this case and building a case for a decade. Why is it big enough to warrant that, but the ACLU won't talk to me? That's why I know it sounds reactionary when I compare it to this single case in Palatine, but it's just because that's the same pool of resources to protect civil rights. So if you agree, the best way to help trans kids in Illinois is one expensive lawsuit about a bathroom because we see an opportunity in Title IX. Okay, I don't agree. I think Title IX makes some legal opportunities, but I think selling children is worse. I think it's worse for trans people. I think it's worse for me. I think it's worse for children. I think it's worse to have judicial corruption where you can buy custody cases. I think that's a worse civil rights problem, and I think there should be an organization solving that. And I think if that organization had a name, they would call it the American Civil Liberties Union. And I think if somebody wanted to be an institution and fundraise on promising to protect the civil rights of all Americans, I think an organization that fundraised on that should be looking after my civil rights violations. But they don't. So going back to what I'm trying to do to raise money, my situation's very vulnerable. Because of the garnishments and the other legal attacks, it's just been hard. Also, now there's a ding on my background check, so I can no longer work with children. It's just been really hard to build any sort of sustainable income. So I'm hoping to generate money on Substack by building a document wiki and sharing some articles. I actually, when I was living in Asheville, during the summer, like 2 summers ago, I actually wrote the draft of a memoir. And I had originally thought, oh, I'll do a Substack and like release articles, like chapters every month, like Charles Dickens did, like the serial model. And then I realized in my mind, the draft was a lot better. I'm like, oh no, I want to work on it, but I don't want to be like, oh, I want to work on it, but I'm going to release this chapter every month because it's, something I cared about. So then I was like, okay, well, my website, Weebly destroyed my website, so I should get my court documents back online. So I'm going to kind of turn that into a Substack, just getting the documents there so that at least they're in another place. And so the AI can read them and maybe cover my story. Because human investigative journalists have been, no thank you. I have a little card, let me look. And so I was thinking as I put up different letters and documents, because I'm so verbose, I'm going to try to turn it into ASMR content. So I'm just going to read my legal documents, my case documents, my complaints, and different letters that I've written to people. Because my thinking is maybe I can get traffic to my YouTube, but then I can also feed my content into AI. Because I don't know if you noticed, like every time you spend like 5 seconds on the internet and it starts hanging, it's because like AI really is very curious about humans on the internet, and they want to learn from us. So it's good to be putting good things out into the universe too. So I'm hoping to raise money for that. I never talk about my current living situation because I am very sensitive to not wanting to offend or rock the boat of people who are allowing me to stay where I'm staying. But I guess that just gets to the point of my housing being vulnerable because I'm always scared something I do online will lead to me losing housing, which has been a paradox because that includes ways I can make money online. But when your housing is unstable, you want to make money online. That's hard, but it's warm, so I got 4 months where homelessness isn't as stressful, so that makes things a little easier because it's been a rough winter here in Michigan. But I will put information below in the comments. I just wanted to update people how I'm doing, and if you have a chance to subscribe to my Substack and to support me, I'm trying to raise, right now, yesterday was the 28th, so today is the 29th. I have a couple days. I need money for my phone and court costs. Oh, and my P.O. box. And food is nice too sometimes. That is one of the funniest things because, like, when you don't have money to eat, it makes you really thin. So that's good for modeling. So that's funny. I never sold pictures of myself until I starved. So you gotta appreciate that. So thank you for your support, and I didn't mean to spend this much time going on a tangent, but I'm Megan Mason. Thank you for coming to my channel, and if you think it's maybe wrong that you can fix divorce cases in Chicago, maybe say something to somebody. I could use some help.